And we're live here on the People's Choice WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here on the People's Choice, and I'm your host, all one word, like a tribe called Quest, Joe Flint. Thank you again for joining us here this evening on this special edition of the People's Choice as we dive into the 2022 election results. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded, for the most part, the 2022 primary general elections here in the U.S. However, there are still some outstanding states and outstanding ballots that are being voted on, or excuse me, being counted in various locations. But as of right now, we have completed, for the most part, the 2022 general elections. And as it would be, the Democrats, according to all projections, the Democrats will have, again, the U.S. Senate with currently 50 seats, or excuse me, with currently 50 seats. Yes, correct. 50 seats that they have held on to in the Senate. As a matter of fact, they gained an additional seat this election cycle, whereas the Republicans are currently at 49 seats and have lost one seat during this election cycle. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been very interesting to see what has been going on during this time. We have seen a lot of ups and downs. If you get a chance to look at a map, the electoral maps that are being shown from every news outlet and news media, you will see that America is very, very divided. And it shows, of course, in the elections in and of itself. And so right now in the Senate, we have 50 Dems and 49 Republicans. That shows the division that America has. But it also shows that the Republican Party did not reach the sweeping numbers that they originally thought that they were going to reach in this election cycle. However, they have at this point still maintained control of the House. And now the question of whether Nancy will be the leader on the minority party moving forward will be in play. But currently reporting on NBC, according to NBC News, the Dems have 216 House seats and the Republicans have 219, which all that's needed is 218. That is reported on NBC News. However, ABC News has not reported that in and of itself. It's still, I guess, tallying or waiting to give the projections, whereas on ABC is showing that the Dems have 206 and the Republicans have 212 in the House. Either way, it is looking like the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, will be able to hold the House this go round, as opposed to the Democrats being able to hold on to the Senate. We know, ladies and gentlemen, that bills start in the House and they go to the Senate and then they're voted on all together. So we'll see how this goes. There's still a lot of hope here in the great state of Georgia. Well, individuals are concerned and waiting for the results of that of the Herschel Walker and Reverend Raphael Warnock ticket. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very strange election cycle here in Georgia, but we are not under any disbelief. Georgia's came out in record numbers this year. A little over 4 million of them voted, whereas Georgia has a little less than 7 million registered voters in the state of Georgia. So over 4 million voted, which is a very good number to see. However, it also shows that Georgia is extremely divided as well. When it came to the election of Georgia's new governor, unfortunately, Stacey Abrams, the champion of people, fell short this time in being elected the governor of Georgia, whereas the incumbent Brian Kemp has once again won the bid for governor of Georgia. Brian Kemp, ladies and gentlemen, whether you like him or not, has, in some way been an advocate, some may disagree, but has been an advocate for jobs and moving Georgia forward. And I think the voters, if you will, have been able to speak to that particular part of him. Not so much that he is a people's person, not so much that he is an everyday person, but the fact that he brought some businesses here to Georgia. Stacey Abrams fell short this time around, and not quite sure why, as she pushed and worked extremely hard to get to this place in this election cycle. But in her true fashion of grace, she bowed out and gave a concession speech for Governor Kemp, and basically let it be known that she is going to continue to do the work that she has been doing before. Ladies and gentlemen, that speaks to the character of her and to the character of anyone in this particular area. It's important that we understand that there is always some win, some lose in elections. Whether or not the candidate that you wanted to be, whether or not the candidate that you were looking for became the candidate that you wanted them to be, does not mean that the work stops at this moment. It means that there is more work to do. We see that Georgia is not, well, they thought, I should say, that Georgia would end up being a blue wave. And right now, Georgia is more purple than it is blue. It's a blurple, if you will. We still have one U.S. Senator, John Ossoff, who is a Democrat, and we're waiting for the outcome of the Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock election. That runoff election will take place come December 6th, which is on a Tuesday, and you will be able to early vote in some counties beginning on November 26th, but the week following, 27th, or I believe it's the 27th or the 28th, all that week prior to the the runoff election, there will be early voting the week prior to the runoff election. So the job here now is not for us to get out there and decide who we want. The job is to get out there and decide to actually vote. What has to happen in this runoff election for the candidates is that that same enthusiasm has to get out and push for those individuals to be elected to office, because Georgia's numbers were astonishing to see that many people actually out voting and pushing for what needed to be done, and pushing for a new election and new leadership here in the state of Georgia. Not only in Georgia, but across the nation, new governors were elected. As a matter of fact, right now we stand again in the division of the United States that there are 23 Democratic governors and 25 Republican governors that currently are serving or have been elected to their specific seats, in the governorship in their states. So, ladies and gentlemen, what this really shows, as I've said at the top of the hour, is that our nation is truly divided. So what do? How do we move forward from where we are to a place in which America really wants to be? And that is working together. Well, part of it, I think, has a lot to do with us putting aside the concerns that one party is better than the other party. I think when we just look at the parties as a whole and examine what their true motives and what their true agendas are, we'll be able to decide how we want an America to be. But you see, the parties right now are really dictating what is decided on how our America should be. I have not seen in a number of years that the constituents, that is you and I, are deciding how we want America, but that our party is making its concerns or its issues the issues of everybody else. Now, what happens is the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party will put out an agenda, and they will accept, or they are pushing for us to accept their agenda, whereas we have to put an agenda on them. When we start to elect candidates who meet our needs as opposed to who meet our wants, we'll start to see a very different America. For right now, we're seeing candidates who are meeting us at our wants, and we want this and we want that. That's with any and every group, nationality, any group of individuals. This is what's happening. People are being elected based on wants and not on the needs of our America. And that is an issue that we face each and every day. If we start electing officials who meet us at our needs and not at our wants, brothers and sisters, we'll see a huge difference in the electorate around our nation. And I don't care if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat. What's important is that you vote for the issues that most affect your community. Right now, when we look at the Senate election here in Georgia, there's a difference of 35,000 votes between the two of the candidates, 35,000. So there are 35,000 individuals, or there needs to be a closed gap of 35,000 individuals to make the difference. Now, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, neither will I ever tell you what you need to vote for. However, you can always tell just by looking at a candidate, what candidate is being pushed by the party and what candidate is working for his or her constituents. And here in Georgia alone, ladies and gentlemen, you can clearly see that there is a candidate being pushed by a party, and then there's a candidate that's attempting to work for his constituents. Now, how does that go? It's very clear that the Conservative Party has tried to put up or used and I hate to say this, but use an African-American male to appease or to pull the votes of Black Republicans. Yes, they do exist. Black Republicans do exist, and they are in great number. But I will just say this, I don't like that the Conservative Party decided to use a Black man to try to gain additional votes of African Americans. If in fact you just found a candidate that was worthwhile, that was good, and that could bring forth the issues and the answers that we need, then it didn't matter if the candidate was Black or white or Hispanic or Asian or whatever his or her nationality would be. The goal is to bring forth candidates who actually are ready and willing to put forth the agenda of the American people, rather than putting forth a candidate who looks like a few people in order to gain the people. It's sad that parties will use this type of tactic in order to get you to vote for them. But the truth of the matter is it has worked. It has worked for the Republican Party because they are just by the skin of my teeth, group of voters who did not vote for Walker or who did not vote for Warnock. And for that reason, we're now in a runoff because Georgia has the 50+1 rule. Here in the state of Georgia, in order for an individual to win the outright seat or outright election, he or she must be elected by 50+1% of the vote. And unfortunately, neither of the candidates, that is Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, met that criteria here in the state of Georgia. So for that reason, we're going into the runoff, which again is December 6th. But that's again going back to the statement that I made earlier about needs versus wants. There is no need for a 50+1 rule again here in the state of Georgia. However, because the parties want it to continue to be the case, we still have it. And brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, children of all ages, we have to decide here in the state of Georgia, which needs to be a ballot measure, whether or not they get rid of the 50+1 rule. It doesn't make sense because now it is wasting of taxpayer dollars all over again. And we're now awaiting for another election, which could have been done just a few nights ago. But instead, we're having to wait for December 6th to decide who will be our next elected senator here in the state of Georgia. And that brings to mind the same conversation that I have time to time again about the electoral college that we have in the US. Both the 50+1 rule and the electoral colleges that we vote for in this nation are being led by the parties. Here in the state of Georgia, it's the political parties, that of the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party, who insist on the need to continue to have a 50+1 rule. And we need to ask the constituents, as the voters, as the day-to-day people who live, work, eat, sleep, and play in the state of Georgia, need to decide to get rid of this 50+1 rule because it is a waste of time and a waste of tax dollars. We have to wait an additional 30 days for us to decide who will be the leader. Now, the problem with that, brothers and sisters, is always the same thing. And I'm going to say this, and you can disagree as much as you want to. Be advised that these are not the views of WCEG. These are the views of Joe Flynn and Joe Flynn only. But there's always an issue when it comes time to get people back out for the runoff election. And so now what happens is that the campaigns have to push, prod, and plead individuals to get out here to vote for the, they have to push, prod, and plead people to get out to vote for the runoff election. They have to beg people. They have to, in some ways, incentivize them to get out to vote. Nobody should have to incentivize you to get out to vote. You should be able to do this on your own recognizance because this is important for you and the nation and the state for which you live. But unfortunately, we have seen in runoff elections, whether it's here in the state of Georgia or other places, but specifically Georgia, where the numbers decrease greatly because the individuals are not as impressed, or the issue is not as important to them as it was during the general election. You wonder why is that? Because it's an ongoing issue. We should have resolved this from the start, but now we have to go another 30 days into figure out who will our next U.S. Senator be here in the state of Georgia. Now, the choice is very simple. Whether you agree with Raphael Warnock or whether you agree with Herschel Walker, ladies and gentlemen, education is extremely important when it comes to being able to serve in this role. Now, does it mean that everybody in this role understands and knows the job that they're going into? No, it does not. Every elected official job is an OJT, that is on the job training. Nobody goes into this role knowing exactly what to expect. Nobody. And so what we have to look at is we have to look at the experience of the candidate prior to the role and what they know and what they can bring to the table. It's very clear that Raphael Warnock, although he has had some tenure in the role now, understands and is pushing for the needs of the people here in the state of Georgia. Clever was the Conservative Party who put forth the commercial that showed all of the deals and votes that he had to give in other places and other states. Very clever commercial. I will say that I was very impressed by it. But for the lack of knowledge, our people perish. And I'm not trying to get biblical on you, but I need you to understand that. What happens in those situations, family, is that Raphael Warnock was voting on bills that have what we call pork or additional things added to the bill. Every bill that goes before Congress always will have additional things that will benefit the country, the counties, the cities, the municipalities, and the states of other areas. And so what the Conservative Party did was show you where Raphael Warnock voted on a bill that encompassed issues or things that had to take place in other areas. That's not him and him alone. That happens with every candidate, or excuse me, every serving congressman in our United States Congress. Every congressman, man or woman, has to vote on a bill which will house some information, or pork as it is called, of things that do not pertain to their states. Now, of course, it is up to that senator to be able to put forward, or that congressman to be able to put forth bills and things that are beneficial to the state of Georgia or to your respective state. And so the Conservative Party, I will say, did a very good job at bringing out the fact that he voted in these other areas. But please be advised that he wasn't voting specifically for that in that area. He was voting for a bill that encompassed that for those areas. I had the opportunity many nights ago, a few weeks ago, actually, before the election, to sit and listen to Raphael Warnock talk about this particular thing. And one of it was a highway, and I can't remember what the highway was, but this highway not only runs in Georgia, but it runs from Georgia all the way over to Texas. And so he was a part of voting for that particular bill because it would bring jobs and money and infrastructure to the state of Georgia on that particular highway. But it was introduced by, I believe, Ted Cruz, I think is who it was. And I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. But it was introduced by a senator from another area. But the part of it that's important is that not only would it help that senator, it was also helping Georgia. And that's how the bills are constructed, and that's how they work on a regular basis. If we're doing interstate infrastructure on Highway 82 or Highway 80, guess what? It's going to go not only from Georgia, but it's going to go into Alabama and to other places. And so if I have to vote and stand with the gentleman or gentlewoman from Alabama in order for that to come to the state of Georgia, then I'm going to do the same thing as well. So again, I just want to say the Conservative Party did a very good job at showing or making you to believe that Raphael Warnock was not voting for the interests of Georgia by showing you that he was voting for other bills. But that is taking place with every U.S. Elected official throughout our nation. Please understand that. But then when we look at an individual such as Herschel Walker, ladies and gentlemen, you have to wonder sometimes, what is it that he is really running for? And what is he standing on? You've heard him, mention about abortion, right? You've heard him mention, I guess, about the need for leadership for Georgia. To be honest with you, I don't know what he's standing on. But the fact of the matter is, you have to take into consideration the whole candidate. And in doing so, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be able to realize that one candidate does not have any of the necessary tools or knowledge it takes in order to serve in this capacity. Now, again, I said it, yes, it is an OJT, it is on the job training, but some are more apt and able to go into the job, willing to do the work and able to do the work, whereas some will be placed into the position as a seat holder and somebody else is going to make all the decisions for them. And let's just be honest. We know that Herschel Walker is not going to make any true decisions in this particular race or in this particular field. Herschel Walker will be led by others to do what is said to be done for the state of Georgia. Now, is that me telling you to vote for Herschel Walker, or is that me telling you to vote for Raphael Warnock? That is not. I'm just giving you the information that I know is to be true. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to make a wise choice and a wise decision when it comes to electing the next candidate the next serving senator for the state of Georgia. But I also don't want you to vote for them based on the fact that they are Republican or a Democrat. Vote for them based on the fact that you see that they have the ability and that they will meet you at your needs and not specifically at your wants. We know that many individuals vote basically party lines and party lines only. And I'll be the first to tell you that I don't do that. I don't believe in that because that is a detriment to our democracy. Just voting a party line. A party line means absolutely nothing. I have seen conservatives do in an area where Democrats haven't. I've seen Democrats do in an area where conservatives haven't. And so it's important that you vote your conscience and not the party. And I stress this more and more each and every election cycle because it's important that we do this and stop just voting based on our party affiliation. Just because you were brought up in a home full of Democrats or just because you were brought up in a home full of conservative or Republicans does not mean that you have to vote that way. What it means is you need to take the opportunity to read and discover the things and research the things on your own concerning the candidate who is running. That way you'll vote an informed decision and not just vote a party decision. I think the worst thing that we can do in this country is continue to vote party decisions and not informed decisions. And I stress that. And some don't agree with me and some think that that's going against what we need and what we deserve. But I'm telling you, we will see a greater America if we start voting our conscience and not our party. That way we won't have individuals who are serving us who have no service for us. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, like I know, that there are many individuals serving in Congress who have been serving years after years, decades after decades, who have not done anything specific for us, who've only done things to better themselves. I often think about during the height of the pandemic, how each of our houses of Congress, both the Democrats and the Republicans, kept saying the American people need this, the American people need that, the American people must do this, and the American people must do that. But none of them, not one of them, foregoed their salary in order for the American people to be compensated for the time that they were being off work or anything like that. Each of our elected officials were still gaining their minimum $175,000 a year salary, while the American people were still back and forth trying to figure out whether or not they would be able to eat or place food on their table or gas in their cars or being able to get to work for that matter at all. And so for me, it's important that we stop voting for a party and start voting for an individual who really represents the needs of our communities. I cannot stress that enough to you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as we examine across the nation where we are looking, again, as I said at the very top of the hour, we are a divided nation. And we're divided amongst things that just doesn't seem to even, well, should not even make a huge difference as opposed to them being a personal issue. As we examine and we talk about the woman's reproductive rights, as we continue to have the discussion of abortion rights, it is saddened to me that this is a political issue when in fact it should be a personal issue. There is nothing about abortion rights or female reproductive rights that should be placed on a ballot, simply because that is a personal issue that has to take place with that woman, her doctor, and her God. Now, I will completely agree with current Senator Raphael Warnock on that statement. It should not be a political issue. And it's the American people who have the right to make this a non-political issue. Right now we're in midterms, and that means that we have 2 years until the presidential election is up again. And currently, President Joe Biden has not made a definitive statement that he will be running again for president. But it is important, it's incumbent upon us to pay attention to all of these things, because that dictates where the country will be in the next 2 years. We have all of these, what would you call them, rock star Democrats or these rock star Republicans, but are they really rock stars amongst the people that are going to need their support and need the aid of the US government? It's unfortunate to me that we rely solely on the federal government to make all the decisions when we have to look at the local governments in our areas and the people who are in our backyards. And once again, here in the state of Georgia, the General Assembly it's once again, I think it's been 10 years, if you will, a whole decade, that it has been held by the Conservative Party. I'm not to say that the Conservative Party is a bad party here in the state of Georgia, but it just shows that they have been able to draw and jimmy the lines to make every area in the state of Georgia more red than it is blue. If you look at a map of Georgia, Georgia has about 4 blots, maybe 5 blots, if you will, of blue throughout the state, whereas every other corner, a crevice in Georgia is that of red. I want to note that Marjorie Taylor Greene, yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, won re-election here in the state of Georgia, the northwest corner of Georgia. Some asked the question, well, how could she win with all of the things and all the conspiracy statements and all of the comments that she has made? Very simple. Everybody in that northwest corner of Georgia believes in what she says, and she is speaking what they can't say out loud. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, there are individuals that are being elected who serve the people based on what they want, but we also are electing people simply because they fall into the line of our political party, and that's not the answer. The reason Marjorie Taylor Greene was able to win double against, I can't think of the guy's name who was running against her, is because she spoke their language. She spoke exactly what she wanted, what they wanted to be said, and what they can't say when they go to work, when they go to public functions, or when they're at church or wherever. They can't say these things out loud, but the representative that they have can say it and speaks to their nature on a day-to-day basis. Can you say that about the representative that's in your area? Can you say that the person that represents you in whatever congressional district that you're in really speaks to the needs of your community? Ask yourself that question. And if they don't, my question is, why have you continued to elect them? Why did you elect them? Did you elect them because they're Republican? Or did you elect them because they're Democrat? And you believe that because they are these party lines that they're going to make the difference for you? Tell me, what has the individual in your district done for you lately? What have they done to move your community and your district forward? What funds have they brought to your district to make your district a more suitable, viable district? Then we know that Georgia as a whole has been in play because Georgia has had the top candidates here lately. But we also know that there are individuals who are not doing the job that they need to do. And we're simply electing them because they fall under the criteria of our particular party. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not what we need. We don't need individuals falling into our party. We need individuals to serve us at the best, at the lowest level of our lives. For you see, there are a lot of people who are still without health care. There are a lot of people who are still without basic needs of being able to feed their family. Georgia's minimum wage is $5.25. $5.20. Who in the state of Georgia can live off of $5.25 an hour and be able to maintain their lives? No one can. But we elected a labor commissioner who does not believe that that needs to be changed. These are the types of things that we need to pay closer attention to when we're moving or going into the election cycle. We need to find out if the individual is really capable and willing to move us beyond where we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia is behind. Marcus Flowers, that's the guy who was running against Marjorie Taylor Greene, Marcus Flowers. Georgia is behind when it comes to certain areas. And we continue to stay this way, not because we don't have the ability to move forward, but because we just continue to elect people who don't have our best interests at heart. When we go back to looking at Marcus Flowers, he raised $15.6 million. $15.6 million for a congressional seat. That's a lot of money, and still lost by at least 31%. She beat him by double percent, but not because she was a better candidate, just because she met the people where they are. And I'm not saying that Marcus Flower was not a good candidate. He probably would have been a better candidate. But this is what we have to pay closer attention to, is the language of the people that are surrounding us. We're so hell-bent, yes, I said hell-bent, on electing individuals based on their political party rather than listening to who they are and being able to push forward the agenda that they plan to set for us. If Marcus Flowers was able to really speak to the heart and the minds of the people in Northwest Georgia, he probably could have come out ahead. Not that he should speak the things that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said, but if he could have found a way to show the people in that area that he believes in, in certain values and believes in less government rather than a bigger government, he probably would have won. And let's just be honest, we don't want the government in our business. We say that we're fine with that. But let me tell you, most African Americans, let's just be honest, don't want anybody in our business no more than they have to be. As a matter of fact, if you grew up in a Black home, you heard this statement more than any other place. What happens in this house stays in this house. And whether that be good, bad, or indifferent, the fact of the matter is when we have a bigger government, they have more say into what goes on into your house each and every day. Now, that's for a whole nother show. I could go on and on about how the government has destroyed many homes and many families based on being bigger than what it needs to be. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, the Conservative Party, whether you like it or not, they have done a bad job at messaging, but there are some, and I say some, not all, there are some actually out there who have an agenda to move our country forward. And they actually work with some liberals, and there are liberals who are working with conservatives to make it happen. But the unfortunate thing is those individuals are not being seen and or heard because they don't meet the party's criteria. There are individuals who are walking around our communities every day who have a better suited plan to move our communities forward than the people who are currently serving us at our nation's highest offices. And so let's recap. Currently, the Dems on the national scale are leading, have control of the US Senate with 50. Now understand, they can break any tie vote if they need, but they have 50. They can break any tie vote if in fact, just God forbid, but if in fact Georgia goes to the conservative, to Herschel Walker, then that puts us at 50-50, because currently the Dems have 50, the conservatives, the Republicans have 49. So if come December 6th, for whatever reason, if Herschel Walker is able to pull it off, then our Senate is divided 50-50. But in favor of the Democrats, we have a Democratic elected president and vice president. Therefore, if there is a vote that is split, then the vice president, who is a Democrat, has the ability to split that vote by being that +1 for the Democrats. But she also has the ability, if for whatever reason the bill or whatever is being brought forth on the Republican side of the House is something that she agrees with, she has the ability to vote for them. But that person that is serving as the vice president currently has the ability to make the deciding vote. She is the +1 that is needed in the Congress. So right now, the Dems on the federal level have 50 seats, and they gained one. And the Republicans have 49 seats. They actually lost a seat. And now we're waiting for the state of Georgia for the runoff election in December 6th to decide who will have full control of the Senate. In the House, NBC is reporting that the Dems have 216 of the 218 that's needed, and that the Republicans have 219 of the 218 needed. That is a total of 435 vote, or 435 representatives. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the number of representatives that we have serving us in the US Congress, 435. That means that there are 435 congressional districts throughout the United States. All of those congressional districts are represented by one individual, whether he or she be Democrat or Republican. And currently NBC is reporting that 216 belongs to the Dems and 219 belongs to the Republicans. However, ABC has not reported that. ABC is still looking at some of the projections, and they've only projected that the Dems have 206 of the House and that the Republicans have 212. I guess we'll know at least by the end of the week when all of the votes are completely tallied and out. Most of them have about 10 days from the time in which the election takes place in order to count all votes and ballots. As far as governorships across the nation, there are 23 states with Democratic governors and 25 states with Republican governors. With that being said, again, that shows just how divided our nation is. Some of the ballot measures that went across the states, I'm going to give some ballot measures for the state of Georgia just before we end here. Just a moment as I pull this up. So there was a ballot measure that was in the primary election, whether or not state officials and lawmakers who are suspended from their job, if they would be able to continue to maintain their pay. And the Georgia proposed amendment was halt pay for indicted state executive officers. And 88% of Georgians voted yes to that, which I agreed. If you're an indicted individual, now we talked about this once before, I agreed on this, but I also agreed that there needed to be a chance that if in fact this person was found to not be guilty for any of the charges, then they need to be back paid. However, it's not worded in that way in that particular bill, but 88% of Georgia voted yes, that is the case, that these people their pay should be halted. And I don't disagree with that, because why are you still collecting a paycheck a year and a half into an indictment and on felony charges, what it is, indictment on felony charges, and you're still collecting taxpayer money? I have a huge issue with that. The other proposed amendment allows local government to offer property tax relief for following disaster areas, and 91% of Georgians voted yes to that. There are areas that are being devastated, that have been devastated by natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, and so on and so forth. And so the amendment was saying that they would get tax relief for those areas. And I do agree, because how can they build themselves back up the way they need to be if they are still paying the tax that is taking place in those areas? So those are just two of the amendments that were brought forth in the state of Georgia that I thought were extremely important for us when it came time for the election of this year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an abbreviated show tonight. We're only doing 45 minutes of it, but I wanted to bring to your attention just how important elections are and how important it is for us to pay close attention to what is taking place in our local areas, as opposed to always paying attention to what's taking place on a national scale. The national scale is important, but I stress to you the importance of local elections more than anything, because everything that takes place on a national scale doesn't always come to you immediately. Some would differ. Some would say, well, we got the relief money very quickly. Well, that was something that could be done immediately, but most laws and things that take place on a federal level take at least a year or 2 years before we see the full enact of it. And whether you realize it or not, some way, somehow, we're going to pay back that money that was given to us under the Trump administration. But as we move forward into a runoff election, ladies and gentlemen, here in the state of Georgia, I want you to know that we have a decision to make. And it's very important for us to make the right decision. Just before we close, I do want to mention that that Vice President Pence did an interview the other day with David Muir and said, and I quote, he said that President Trump put me and my family and the American people in harm's way. That statement is probably one of the most profound statements I've ever heard of a vice president concerning the president that he served with and under. And I could care less if you're a Republican or if you're a Democrat. I need you to understand, when a president has the ability via his words to stop something, everyone in leadership, their words matter. And so when you say things, words matter to people all the time. I don't care if you're in leadership or not. if you mean good or bad to people. Your words matter. There's an adage that we learned growing up that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. I assure you that you can heal from sticks and stones, but words dig deep and they hold on to you throughout your entire life. Believe that. That's why people make a lot of changes and do certain things in their lives based on the words and comments that people have said about them. And so we saw in this election, whereas President Trump thought that he was going to be able to sweep a tsunami on the Republican ticket, he did not do that because his words affected people greater than he thought. Or well, he didn't care. And his words are being reiterated by former Vice President Michael Pence. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to listen to the Vice President. As a matter of fact, he's writing a memoir. It's a tell-all memoir. And I have no problem with reading it because I really want to know what was it like to serve in a White House next to somebody like Donald Trump. Now, whether or not Donald Trump is crazy or was just saying stuff out of his mouth because he could do so, I do not know. But what I know is that January 6th was the highest level of treason that I've ever seen and or heard of in our nation, and the president should be held accountable for that. And so we thank Vice President Pence for being able to come forward and speak openly and candidly about that situation and about what he feels that the president did and did not do for the American people. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our segment this evening. We appreciate you for joining us here on the People's Choice on WCEG Talk Radio, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Network. I hope that something has been shared tonight, something that has been said will help you along the way. Again, happy Veterans Month, if you will, to all of the veterans, all of those that served our nation, both here on U.S. soil and in foreign areas. We thank you for the service to this country. It's because of you that we are able to sleep at night in a land of the free because of the brave. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm your host, Joe Flint, all one word, like a tribe called Quest. Good night from the People's Choice.